divide us. He will not 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 divide us. He will not. Shut the fuck up! Just shut the fuck up! Shut the fuck up! Shut the fuck up!
Hello everyone, this is your dank lord of the memes, otherwise known as Billy, and today I'm going to be talking about Manhunter, the Oversize edition, which is another tribute book to Jack Kirby, who would have turned 100 this year. Anyway, this book, in my opinion, was far better than the last two books I read, which were Newsboy Legion and The Black Racer. This book, unlike those two, did not have any SJW narratives, which made it a lot more enjoyable, a lot more fun to read. It is a very quick book. It isn't very complex. It's very much like a one-shot, and it's much shorter than the other books because it is in fact split up into two stories, one featuring Manhunter and the other featuring another Jack Kirby creation, which is Etrigan the Demon. So Manhunter is, even though he looks like it, is not one of the alien robots that basically turned evil and began plaguing the universe before being stopped by the Green Lantern Corps. This is in fact a man dressed in a costume very similar to the Manhunter robots, and he goes around beating up gangsters and criminals in a very violent way, as in he's basically an anti-hero. He is not like Superman or some of the other heroes that don't really go above and beyond when it comes to fighting crime. So anyway, the origin of the character, or at least as I interpret as the origin, is that he was, looks like a defense attorney or someone who had a close friend murdered by a criminal, which in a sense inspired him to become to become a vigilante who would go around attacking mobsters, because his friend was basically, he believed, murdered, and his murder got away. So it's kind of your very classic, injustice happens, so the main character dons a secret identity to go around beating up criminals in order to symbolically avenge, his lost friend's life. So anyway, the book has a cameo by the Sandman and Sandy. As you can see, the Sandman is in his more later version. It's not the old school cloak and fedora hat with trench coat and fedora hat with a gas mask. It's more like an actual superhero costume in a typical way. And they also have his sidekick with him, which is pretty cool and interesting, because I've always been a real big fan of kid sidekicks in comics. I know there are several people that like to say that kid sidekicks are very cheesy and have no real place in comic books anymore, but I really like it. And one of the things I like about the comic book is the art style, in a way similar to the last few, definitely captured the very Golden Age-esque style of the story. It definitely felt like it was a comic book from the Golden Age, but with a little more, it's like a Golden Age art style, but more revamped, which is really nice and interesting to read. And the action scenes were also really good, because in the story, Sandman and Sandy come across Manhunter taking care of several gangsters, and Sandman disapproves of his excessive use of violence, which in turn gets them into basically a pretty big fight, which kind of is like a battle of ideologies as well as fists. Like Sandman will give speeches such as, you can't go around beating up people and going this far with excessive violence. It's not just about, beating up people. It's about inspiring hope and wanting people to change. As the line goes like this, maybe that's your problem. You see people like animals. The only thing going to sleep is you, which is what Manhunter responds after Sandy tries to take him down. But I like the line that maybe that's your problem. You see people like animals, because in this comic, it sounds like Manhunter was basically lived in the jungle before he came to the big city to fight crime, which is probably why he has such an aggressive personality and method to fighting crime. Because he does also give a monologue after he's given this speech by Sandman that let me see, that basically, what is it? Oh yeah, he says this, when you herd the masses in tight, close corners and apply the pressures of life, it begins to splint into two groups, hunter and prey. If you want to protect the herd, then you must remove all threats by any means necessary. So this is basically his response to Sandman's comment that not a chance. Being a hero isn't just about catching the bad guys. The war left Americans scared and confused. A hero should lead by example, inspire the minds of the people with hope. It's an important lesson for you to learn, even if I have to beat it into your pea-sized brain. So basically, it's kind of like that classic argument, moral argument between is it okay to use excessive violence, and is the purpose of heroes merely just to take out criminals and beat them up, or is there also a symbolic message as well to inspire hope and be an example for people to become better and stuff? So it's like a very classic debate, and I feel like it works very well for DC comic because there are a lot of DC heroes that follow the mold that superheroes are in fact people who we aspire to be and try and better ourselves by their inspiration. So I feel like this was definitely a very well written book. It was written by Keith Giffen, who has definitely a really great history of writing very decent comics, and I must say it is very refreshing after all of this SJW fiasco going on at Marvel and DC, because DC has also been having several issues. Just watch my angry comic book review of Newsboy Legion and you'll see what I'm talking about. But this is definitely very refreshing. It's definitely this book, in my opinion, is definitely a proper tribute to Golden Age characters, which make it a very great read, and I definitely enjoyed it. And I don't really want to spoil the ending or the climax, or I don't want to spoil the entire climax or the ending, but I will say that in my opinion, I rather enjoyed it. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how would I rate this book? I would definitely give it an 8. Just because, in my opinion, the art style is really good. It feels like a Golden Age comic remodeled for the modern age, and the writing is good. I can understand what's happening. It's just there's no SJW bullshit, and I freaking love it. I just think it's a really great book. So, yeah. So Manhunter, definitely a great read. And now I want to also talk about the Etrigan story. The Etrigan story is kind of reads like an introduction to the character, where you have basically a monologue by Jason Blood, otherwise known as Etrigan, talking about his history quickly, so you kind of understand how the character is and his past and all of that stuff. And it's kind of a quick one shot, kind of like the Manhunter as well, where basically Jason Blood wants to be free of Etrigan because he was cursed to basically become the demon when he says these magic words, and he is given a potion by the priest, which is magical, in hopes that it would weaken the demon's hold over him. And it turns out to be a trick by the priest who is in fact a demon as well, and decides wants to kill him. So even in the demon's weak state, Jason Blood is able to say the magic words that turn him to Etrigan, and the demon appears and he's able to fight the priest. And the fight lasts for it's pretty quick, and once it's over, the church that he's in currently is burning to the ground, and basically there's kind of a monologue where Etrigan talks about if he wants to change back so he can apparently save himself, otherwise he could just let himself burn and die, because I guess for him, being trapped inside Jason Blood's body is just as much torture as it is for Jason Blood to be cursed to have Etrigan. So it's kind of that duality. So to me, it's also, for me, I think it was a really great extra add-on, and getting 2 stories for the price of one book, which is $5, was pretty nice. And after reading this, I feel like I would like to see more of Manhunter if DC decides to use the character more in their main continuity. And I also hope they start using Etrigan again, because Etrigan is definitely one of the cooler supernatural heroes at DC. He's definitely among fan favorites. I feel like he's definitely up there with Constantine and Zatanna, since he, to me, seems like a very excellent character. So anyway, should you read this book? I say yes. It is a definitely great read, and I feel like anyone who loves the Golden Age and is also interested in Etrigan stories should definitely read this book. And I definitely highly recommend it. And if you haven't gotten it, then I suggest go out and buy it. So anyway, that's all I have to say. If you like what you saw here, then hit the like button and subscribe. The link to my Twitter account will be in the description of this video. That is all. This is your Dank Lord of the Memes signing out.